It's actually not bad. We just need to make sure people can hear us. It looks like we're live. Let me ask Gabby. Let's see. We do. Look at that. How good is the audio? Let me actually go on my YouTube and see. Say something there, Quirt.
Hello. Can you hear it?
Say something there, Quirt. Oh, it's amazing. There's just a little bit of a delay.
Is it coming out of both of ours? There's just a little bit of a delay. Leo, can you hear it from both of our mics or just Carlos's? Leo, can you hear it both of us?
No, just through mine.
Both of us? No, just through mine.
Yeah, just mine's coming through. Aaron Pace. Can't hear Court at all. Just Carlos. Thanks, Aaron.
How did you select the audio?
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest. Click on edit there on the right side. We might have to end the stream and start again if that won't ruin it.
You can leave that open, Leo. Can we just share mic? Just toss that in the middle.
What if we end the stream?
You chewing on glass straight into
Yeah. Guys, we're going to end the stream and come back live. Hopefully. Click on that. Sorry. Should we try ending the stream?
Well, I wish we could talk. I wish we could talk to Aaron. He's the tech guy. Aaron, what do we do?
He can hear us. You can ask him. If we leave the mic here in the middle, let's see.
Let's just try that. That's right here. Sure, thank you.
Aaron said it works well with the mic in the middle.
Okay, Aaron, if we just talk like that, is it good enough or is that not great audio? Okay, just leave it there. Lower this a little bit. Thanks, Aaron. The real MVP. We need Aaron as a guest. Aaron, will you come on as a guest? Say.
Even with the mic in the middle, it's better than the double mic. Nice. And it looks cleaner. Look at that.
Look how clean that looks.
Should we start?
Let's start. You have the list of questions there?
I do.
Okay. I'll start it off.
Let me just pull them up.
Aaron said yes. We have to start with the classic intro. You ready?
I am ready. All right.
Welcome to Elevate Utah.
Utah's #1 growth podcast.
I'm Court Brady,
I am Carlos Souza.
and today we are your hosts and your guests.
Yes.
Pumped to launch off the new year with a live stream. We've never done this before, so thank you guys for who are joining, watching live. We're stoked to answer some of your questions and talk about some of the stats from this last year, a little bit about where we're going with the podcast, and some of our favorite takeaways.
And we need to announce the new studio.
This is the new studio.
We are in the same place that we always record. It looks completely different. About 5 minutes ago, we're still putting this up. So it's great. We're excited.
All right. Well, let's start off with some of the stats. You have those from Gabby. As Carlos is pulling these up, we, if you haven't heard, we started the podcast so that we could spend more time together and provide information back to early stage entrepreneurs that don't necessarily have the funds like we didn't when we were starting out, and give them some of the insights from some of the brightest minds in Utah. And as we've done that, we didn't know if we would do it for a couple months or 6 months. We got to the 6-month mark and thought, man, we need to keep at it, and got to the end of this year and realized this is something that we want to do for years to come. Brand Elevate Utah, potentially turn it into a venture fund or a PE fund, and do a lot of good in the world with it. So thanks for being part of the early part of the journey, because it's been a whole year. We've done over 50 episodes, but there's going to be hundreds.
Yes. Expanding on what Court said, about 2 years ago, I was tasked to start a sales team at our company. And at the time,
at Aspen, that Carlos, we have a huge announcement. Actually, this is a big announcement.
I'm a dad. That's the announcement.
Carlos is a dad. He's also the CEO of Aspen. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that as we go into the podcast.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that. But then 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, actually, 2.5 years ago, I was tasked to start a sales team at Aspen. Had never done really B2B sales. I was going through books, lots of free content online, but couldn't really put those things together and actually run with that information. There was just a lot. So we went ahead and hired Soren. We've had him on the podcast, and paid him, thousands of dollars to come as a consultant, help me put some processes together. And at that point, I just realized that there's probably so many entrepreneurs out there and founders and early stage sales reps that don't have the funds that we already had 3 years ago, to spend thousands of dollars on a consultant. So that's the main reason why I wanted to do the podcast, so we could actually provide free content to you guys, to the audience, to people in Utah, to people across the world that are starting sales teams, that are starting companies. We're going to be working on organizing the data so that you guys can easily access our episodes that talked about marketing, episodes that talked about sales. We're going to be working on that in the future to make that experience even better. So just kind of expanding a little bit on the why there for me.
Tell us some of the stats.
Some of the stats, guys. So YouTube, we've had a total so far in the last year of 71,800 views. That's combined, all views together, so shorts and episodes. But that's incredible. 71,000, not people, but 71,000 views. But probably around 50,000 people have actually seen our content.
That's pretty cool. We're about to, we could probably announce it. We're about to have Jane Williamson on our podcast, who's the Utah mom. And I looked at the numbers. It's just a ridiculous amount of views on every single episode. And so she gets 71,000 before she goes to bed after posting a late night post. But for us, that's we thought, man, if we could just get a few hundred.
Yeah, that's 71,000 more than we thought.
Yeah.
we'd
It's
get.
amazing.
We've had a total of 890 watch time, so hours. So people have watched our content for 890 hours, which that's crazy. That how many days is that?
Yeah.
Divided by
890 divided by 24.
it's about 20 days, 40 days,
I won't say 37.
Thir-
37 days.
37 full days. Just grateful that people actually take the time to uh, just to hear what we're talking about. 158 subscribers on YouTube. The best short that we've had is with John Richards. The title was Smart Investing, and that one had a little over 3,300 views. And the top episodes have been Cole, Nate, and Peyton. We've actually had people on the podcast that said, I've learned about your podcast because I watched Nate's episode or I watched Cole's episode and I learned this on that episode. So,
What do you think it
pretty
was
cool stuff.
about Cole, Peyton's, and Nate's episodes that caused them to be the highest viewed?
Um, Cole, and I hope he watches this. I think Cole is just that guy that everyone wants to be around and wants to spend time. And whenever he opens his mouth, everyone around will stop to listen. There's just that energy from him, and I think that has a lot to do. People when saw their post, when they saw the shorts, but also Cole posted on his LinkedIn, and that helps a ton. Nate, it was purely the content. Yeah,
We had multiple people that said, I watched that episode 15 times.
Yeah.
And I've actually never watched one of our episodes except for Nate's, because we're there living it. I've watched shorts and things like that, but I've rewatched Nate's episode to get a refresher on the content. And if you don't remember Nate, if you're watching, he has long hair, wore a beanie. We interviewed him at like 6:30 in the morning because he was going to go hit some 7:30 a.m. Powder day up and he's going to walk up the mountain and then ski down it. And I think it takes him a couple hours to walk up and a minute and a half to maybe 30 seconds to ski down it. But he talked about being present and not having judgment and
your calling, finding your calling.
Finding your calling. It was an amazing episode. So I would encourage you to listen to it if you haven't listened to it.
And Peyton, I always remember, Peyton's content was also incredible, super real. But I always remember this story that Peyton told at the podcast. He said that he just bought a house, and the house didn't have a backyard yet. Do you remember that? And he was playing with his kids in the mud, and then he was just frustrated, like, "Hey, I can't wait for us to have a backyard. I can't wait to have grass and this to look pretty." And then 2-3 weeks later, the company, the landscaping company came, put the backyard together. And then a few weeks later, he was like, "Man, it was so fun when we were playing in the mud." And then talking about being present as well and just enjoying wherever you are in life. That really stuck with me. It's one of the most impactful things that I've heard in the podcast and been carrying with me ever since. So the content of that one was just pure and
I think my takeaway for Pate was a theme of Chandler's as well. So quick recap of Chandler and Peyton's story. Peyton got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma a couple years ago, and Chandler, his brother, his wife, Chandler's wife Maddie, who was Peyton's sister-in-law, got diagnosed with colon cancer 3 weeks later, and Maddie ended up passing away. Peyton is in remission, and they both went through chemo, both of their families, and just how difficult that was. And Peyton talked about wishing the experience or wishing the learning on everybody, but the experience on no one. But you can't have one without the other often.
Mm-hmm.
That was super impactful for me. He was able to take something that was so hard and make something good out of it.
Yeah. Peyton also shared the episode with his network, which, guys, that does more than anything. Just going and sharing. That's where most of the views come from. So thanks for those that share often. And if you haven't, please do. That does a lot for us.
I want to hear some of the questions.
Okay.
And if you're on right now, you're welcome to type some questions Aaron, I ugly cried listening to Chandler's episode. Aaron, we recorded that episode at like 12:30 a.m. Chandler was driving down to speak at a real estate conference the next morning, and he got here at like 11:30, and we recorded till 1 a.m. And I remember talking to Nate, who's been my coach for the last couple of years, and just said, "Man, I'm so grateful for my relationship, so grateful for my life." And he said, "Well, tell me why." And I said, "Well, I'm just coming off this episode with Chandler and him talking about his relationship with Maddie and how grateful he is um, for Maddie and those experiences, and now how grateful he is for Jessica." And Nate encouraged me to figure out a way to cultivate that feeling for longer periods of time. So what can you implement into your life so that you can have that same gratitude and same desire to be present for not just a week or two after this podcast, but for a longer period of time? And I've found some of those things, and would encourage any of the listeners to do that similar exercise. It was really helpful.
I love it. Are you ready for the first question?
That's it.
Okay. Malena sent four
Malena
questions.
who?
Yeah, now we have two Malenas. So
We know Malena who.
we know Malena Venturini asked, be real. So I'm going to ask you, Kurt, what's the hardest part about starting a business?
The hardest part about starting a business is that no matter how many successes you've had, you still think you suck, no matter what. And you get into it and you do suck. That's the part of a startup. I made a LinkedIn post today talking about our church. We have an open mic once a month where anyone in the audience can just stand up and say whatever they want to say. And someone stood up this month and said, faith is the act of moving forward in the face of uncertainty. It's like, that's, of course, that's what faith is. And as I reflected on that, I was like, that's what a startup is. And I always want more certainty. I always want to know I'm good enough. I always want to know what the answer is going to be. I always want to know what the price is I can sell it for. And there's so much uncertainty in a startup, and you just suck at everything that you do. It's what it feels like to me, at least. And there's a chance you're going to fail. And to combat that, I've I read, it was like 5 or 10 years ago that I read this spectrum of you should be no less than 40% confident, but no more than 70% confident, which means you're going to fail about 33% of the time in your decisions and your activity. You're going to be wrong. So you only get to be right 66% of the time, a little better than average. But if you're less than 40% confidence, too much risk, too much failure. And if it's above 70% confidence, then you're not pacing fast enough. You're not making this. There's a little throw out for you, Aaron Pace. You're not pacing fast enough to make any real change. Yeah. And so you got to take more bets.
How do you manage those emotions when you are a founder? Because I go through that at least once a week where I just go to bed. I'm like, I don't know if I'm cut for this. I don't know if I have what it takes. I don't know if I just, all of these doubts and insecurities. How do you manage that?
That's a great question. And I've learned a ton about how to manage that from you. And so I'd love to ask you the same question. And there's a little poem that you've recited enough that I almost have it memorized, but would love to ask you that question.
It's funny because when I see people struggling with emotions, I quickly go to that poem and share that with them. When I am struggling with those insecurities, I never remember that poem.
I've never seen you have those insecurities.
I just keep them to myself. I don't know if I really have a secret. I remember Troy. We had Troy Mason on the podcast, and then actually it wasn't Troy. It was
what was his business or her?
Construction.
Dave Nicholson.
It was Dave Nicholson, and Dave said, Troy also said something similar, but maybe I'm just stupid and don't know when to give up. So I just put my head down and keep on going. Um, that's it. It might be too simple and people don't like how simple it is, but really, it comes down to you're feeling terrible, you're feeling insecure, you're feeling that you can't do it. All right, that's fine to feel like that. Wake up at 6 a.m. tomorrow and do it all over again. At one point you're gonna get it right. But there's that poem that I love, which is called "If" by Kipling, and it talks about. It's my favorite poem, and I like to read it at least once a month. My favorite line is, "If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters the same way, and then yours is the earth and everything that's in it." Um, so I can't say that I approach my life that with that stoic approach every time, but I people that work with me maybe get annoyed by that. But when we close a huge client, I usually say that's awesome. When we lose a big client, that sucks. But I'm not gonna let that ruin my day and my week. Okay, let's learn something from it and move on. It's not as pretty as it sounds. It's a lot harder, and it's not always. But I've always think about the oscillation, for electricity. You have alternative al- alternating.
Again, there's some people on the live that could tell you.
Anyways, there is, translating from Portuguese, but there's continuous, um,
Currents.
currents, and then there's alternating. But if you really think about the oscillations of life, I've the way that I approach life, and I've learned from my dad, and I that's not how I approach, but I try is to bring those oscillations to as close as possible to the middle, and try to stay there. Maybe that's not a healthy approach. A lot of people probably say that I'm, just um, maybe a lot of people would just say that it's not healthy to, um, control your emotions that much. But for me, it does feel like it helps me to keep the oscillations of my life to, a certain degree, and just keep on doing things.
I think it's was one thing that was really difficult for me starting off is I saw entrepreneurs that had successful businesses, and I try and say what principles or characteristic traits does that entrepreneur have, or do those group of entrepreneurs have that made them successful? And one of the parts that's difficult is that if you attach success to a certain characteristic trait that you see in multiple successful entrepreneurs, stress, for example, ego, for example, like the negative side effects, freaking out, being a jerk, like those things are not correlated with success. Losing your temper, yelling at people, like they're just not being loud. Some loud people are successful, but being loud didn't make them successful.
Hmm.
And hearing your approach, I think, is very different than my approach. I think when you're going through stuff, you internalize it and you process it. I think I am super like, I'm going to talk to somebody about this, be super vulnerable about it. And we both figure out how to process it in our own way. When you're going through your oscillations in life, you try and bring them as close to the middle as possible. I try and expand them as far as possible and then attempt to be present in the moment
Right.
to feel it. I feel like for me, that's expanding my life.
Hmm.
And so for people listening and for people starting companies, I think it's for them figuring out what is going to work for them. The underlying principle that both of us had is when things got hard, we didn't stop. We woke up the next morning and did it again and again and again and again, no matter how many times we thought we failed.
And we've had over 50 people in the podcast, and honestly, about 40 of them said the same thing.
Yep.
It's not a fancy formula that we read on books. It's that simple and easy. Just put your head down and keep on doing it.
And make sure what you're pushing for is big enough to fill your life. Like if you're gonna go grind on something, you might as well have a massive upside, not something that you could go to make the same amount of money working for somebody else. Like make a big, it doesn't have to be money as your measuring stick, but make a big impact. Swing for the fences.
I love it.
Good question, Milena.
Next question. Aaron has a question there.
Let's see. Wow. Or was there a question? Let's see one.
It's up there. My first question.
What's a personal? Why don't you? On here. My first question: what's a personal growth challenge you've faced in the last little while, and how has it shaped your perspective on life and work?
I have one very
Okay,
recent.
let's go.
So, what is a personal growth challenge you faced? Um, my wife just had a baby about a month ago, and while she was pregnant, I heard a lot of people saying your life would change completely, and I heard that and I was like, cool, I get it. Until the baby got here. I just remember we're in the hospital. He was born at 5:20 the day before Thanksgiving, 5:20 p.m., and he's just sleeping, and the nurses go out of the room and it's just us and the baby. And then around 9 p.m., I look at him and he's choking and there is brown liquid coming out of his mouth. And the lights were off, so I thought it was blood. I had never felt that way before because I thought he was, there was blood coming out of his mouth and something I thought the worst. Um, and I quickly jumped out of the sofa and called the nurses and it's funny because also my wife, she couldn't get out of bed, but she just jumped out of bed with her stitches on, and just kind of made her recovery even worse. But that first experience and then the last 30 days, you're just it's just so hard. It's so hard to take care of a baby. It is hours and hours of helping someone without receiving anything in return and just caring endlessly and unconditionally for someone, sleeping. I remember before, if I had a rough night, I would, sleep in the morning or just like complain during the day. I've had 35 rough nights in a row by now that I only slept
It's because you
4 hours.
sleep on your chest. That's why.
Yes, probably. But I just can't get mad at him. Or I've been learning about first the appreciation for people that have kids, and then second, well, first my mom, my parents, people that have kids, but second, um, it's just caring for someone, giving your life without expecting anything in return. And it is as cheesy as it sounds, but I just never had that experience in my life where you're willing to you just I work 5 to 10 hours on him every day, at night, during the day, sometimes when I get a break from work. Just and I could do 20, 24 without expecting anything in return. And that's just teaching me a lot about being, I don't know, I just noticed how selfish I was, I guess. And just expecting things in return. I don't know. It's just teaching me a lot. It's humbling me a lot.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
At the
I don't
sa-
know. I know it's not business related, Aaron. So I'm sorry that it's gone on a tangent, but that's so recent, and that's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
about 6 or 3, 7, I don't remember how many days before you guys had Felipe, you were made the CEO of Aspen. So, couple big stresses all at the same time. I'm curious, what are your takeaways from this first month as a new CEO?
um, I think the biggest one so far is um, as a leader, you spend a lot of your time. It feels like you spend a lot of your time organizing people's energy and thoughts to the right direction. And I thought that would change when you become a president or a CEO. Um, but it's the same thing. You would think that, and it's nothing. I'm not saying anything negative on the directors of our company or anything like that, but it is the same thing. You're literally channelizing everybody's energies and time and focus. You're helping them all go to the same direction. And I thought that wouldn't be. I thought that as a CEO, as a president, that would change. People are more.
Because you have
You
executives
have
reporting to you.
executives; they're more independent. But it's nothing to do with maturity or that. It's more like it doesn't change. It's as a leader, you're always um, aligning people and getting them to walk and drive to the same place. So that's definitely the biggest thing I've learned, and that's where I've been spending most of my time for the last month. And then the second thing is just the importance of getting the wrong people off the bus, getting the right people on the bus, on the right seats, and that's where I'm spending all of my time. And just also like how important those hard conversations are. We have this tendency of avoiding hard conversations, and somehow we think it's going to be easier later on. I'm the opposite. We've talked about the opposite of a one night stand, which is how I approach hard conversations. But within my first 2 weeks, I went and had like all the hard conversations I needed to have, of course, strategically, but I just felt an instant amount of trust back to me because people knew exactly where they stand and they didn't have to spend any energy reading between lines. So I another learning is that how people appreciate honesty. You just it sucks. It's a hard thing to do to look in people's eyes and say, "I don't think you're part of the team anymore," um, which I thought that would actually cause problems with that person, but that individual actually came and said, like, I appreciated the honesty and transparency, and now they have time to find. Anyway, so
They already knew it before. They just didn't know that they knew it. But
yeah,
every sign, like they're not dumb.
yeah, but just the people actually
Now they
appreciate.
respected you.
We think we're doing people a favor by not having hard conversations with them, but it turns out that if we wait too long to have those conversations, that's when we lose their trust and we lose their friendship. If we actually have those conversations as early as possible, you actually gain their trust because they feel like you're being honest with them.
Love that.
Now your growth experience.
What's I want to hear from. Oh, these are some great questions.
Now we need you to answer that question. What's a growth challenge?
A growth challenge for me, bro. I don't know how to do B2B sales. I suck so freaking bad at it. I didn't know how to cold call, didn't know how to LinkedIn message, everything like discovery, demo, close, anything like that. And so I decided to get good at it. Decided to take a course, decided to do it. Did my cold calls this morning. And it, I back to Melena's question, like it's just, you have a thing after thing, no matter how many successes pile up, it's not going to make you successful. I had this quote from Clayton Christensen. Let me read it to you. I freaking love it. So I love the book How Will You Measure Your Life? And on Saturday I was putting together my goals for the new year. So I delved into it a little bit, and then Courtney went to bed, and then I was listening to it on Audible, and it's only a 5-hour book, but if you put it in 2.5 hour or two and a half times speed, it's only 2 hours. So like I was up for the next 2 hours listening to it. And this quote stood out to me. Self-esteem comes from achieving something important when it's hard to do, not from an abundance of resources. When I got done with Aspen, I moved out, like it made some money. I moved on to this next thing, and then I realized that I sucked so bad at doing these things that were really, really important. And I saw my confidence not mere my financial situation, but mere my capability to execute on seemingly important things. And so that's flipped as I've put in the reps. Like the only thing, wake up the next day and do it again and again and again until you don't suck at it so bad anymore. And then you eventually get mediocre, and then you eventually get good, and then great. And as I did that, the confidence came back, the results started happening. We started having more people interested in Covalent. All of those things started happening. So that would be it, Aaron, to answer your question. That struggle of B2B sales was hard.
What is the most
do more? Whatever you're going to ask is do more reps.
No. What is the most important thing you've learned about B2B sales in the last, since you've been doing that?
You don't get good at it until you do more of it. From you, like
What's
I
the
said,
secret? to be a good sales B2B sales person.
The same answer. Do more of it. Like there's not a secret. It's just the sucky grind, hard part of fumbling over your words and feeling like an idiot and realizing that you have a table of smart people in front of you. You have no idea what they're thinking, but they're probably thinking, "Man, this kid like." Sure, he did not scale a company to 75
Yeah,
people, but
it
like
looks like
he
he's
made that.
15.
Looks like he's 15 and he has no idea what he's talking about. And so, like, you wing it and you practice and you do your best over and over and you get better. And yeah,
I think
that's
that's
it.
the thing in B2B sales that I don't feel it's talked about enough. And I know we're all over the place here, but just touching on that, you when you do B2C, B2D sales, there's a lot of techniques that you can do to convince people. Like you can say this, you can, put your feet in a certain, your foot in a certain way. You can have the room temperature. Anyways,
We had
with
planned out in door-to-door sales
like,
when we would break eye contact.
yeah,
Like 3.5 seconds in,
you
you
break.
point at the neighbors, and then another 3.5 seconds in, you look at
There you
your
go.
little name tag.
In B2C sales, you can have
That
all of that.
works.
My honest opinion is in B2B, yeah, you can do that. You can have the perfect pitch. Can have the perfect strategy, the perfect technique. But if you don't have a great product and you don't have the ability to understand people's problems, connect with them, and show you how you can solve it, that's simple. Just connecting with people, just relating to them, and having a great product. You can have the best technique in the world. These people have MBAs. They have PhD. These people that are buying in B2B your product, they're you actually most of the time smarter than us.
Yep.
There is no technique we can do that will convince them. It's just make the product, make the message as clear as possible, have a great product, and relate with people. Anyway,
And
so
maybe to go on that a little bit more, when I say how hard B2B sales is, it's not just a sell. It is all of those. Who is my ideal customer profile? What's their most significant problem that they're going through? How does my solution solve that in a unique way that's cheaper and frictionless compared to all the other solutions that they have? And then how do I portray that in a short 5 second or 5 word and 30 second and 2 minute and 15 minute and 45 minute either pitch or presentation. Like, and then if one of those ingredients are missing, you're not getting the finished cake that you thought you were putting in the oven. It's going to turn into something else. You have to have every single one of those
yeah,
dialed in. And that's, I think, why a startup is so freaking hard.
yep, yeah. Comes it in to going. It comes down to trust. They have to that relation. The way you relate to them. I think that is more important than that. Even is, do they trust you? And you build
Yeah.
that in the first 5 minutes with them, and that would define the course of the deal. Anyways,
The fortunate part about this time around, unlike door-to-door sales or even Aspen or now LLC, I can't stop thinking about covalent. Like I fall asleep going through, oh, what if we built the matrix this way? And I take showers thinking about like, what if we had the org chart function this way? And like, I can't get it out of my head. And that's such a blessing this time around. The other times, I think I for sure had a mercenary approach of if we make this successful, then we'll be able to have these funds to do X. And this time around, it's been one of the biggest blessings to be able to be so passionate about the problem that we're
yeah.
solving.
Aaron McReynolds said that in our podcast when he came over. I think that was episode maybe 10, 12. I think we asked him when not to start a business, and he answered, "If that's not keeping you up at night,
Yeah.
don't do it."
Yeah.
And I can see that in your eyes.
It has to
Which,
exist.
yeah,
We have to make it exist.
which you didn't have with now. You
Yeah.
were struggling to find that fire. Now it's, yeah, and customers buy that.
Customers buy it. And also, there are entrepreneurs, and this is totally all right, that are wired to be mercenaries. They
Yeah.
see a great financial opportunity and they go create value in the world and they capture a portion of that value. It's amazing. All for it. For me at this time of my life, it had to be intrinsically driving for me. Let's get another question. Let's see. Gabby, what was the most critical decision you made in the early days of your startup, and how did it impact your growth? Is that for me?
That's for you.
The most important decision I made in the first year was to bring Lance Black on as a partner. We were 9 months in. We had $3,185 of revenue total.
What was your
And,
forecast for that year?
forecast is like $252,000 of profit a month by the end, by month 8. So we obviously didn't hit that. 252,000 a month of profit. We're still not there with Aspen in profit, a monthly profit. But he came on and had connections. He knew the industry, knew the space, was able to teach it to me, and was able to start getting sales. Sales solves so many problems early on in a company. Once you get to the $1 million mark, you can then start attracting talent. But finding somebody that can sell, or being the person that can sell. And I came from door to door, but again, didn't have that B2B experience, didn't know what our product was. I didn't even know what ICP meant, ideal customer profile. That was the most important early on decision.
So bringing on a co-founder, was it his connections and his sales skills, or was it a partner that was in the trenches with you?
He was both for me. That was never able to be fully lifted until you. There was not a partner. I'm sorry, I have a terrible New Year's cold. There was not a
Or
partner.
you're just getting emotional?
No, about you. There wasn't a partner that came on that shouldered the burden. And I remember we were at Corn Bellies, whatever this place was,
Yeah.
for over Thanksgiving, and there's a report that had to be done. And texted you because I saw some employees there. I think I texted you a picture of Danielle and Tyler and Jake that we ran into them, and you texted me a picture back with like a thumbs up in front of your computer at the office. It's like, Courtney, we gotta go. We left. She took the kids home. I think we only had Henry at the time, and I headed over to the office, and we started grinding together like midnight.
That was fun.
And that was the first
remember
that was the first time I was like, and not that I didn't have that from other partners, but you were the first person that came on, and no matter what happened, there was no other path. You were going to make Aspen successful, even in spite of me, regardless of what I was going to do. You were going to make it successful. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of people make in a startup, is that they start a company and then they think, this is so incredibly lonely. I need somebody. So they give up some equity. They're not going to give up all of the equity. They're not even going to give up 50%. But they give up 5, 10, 15% to an early stage founder. And that person is not going to be there when all the stuff hits the fan. Like, it will be you. And if you're lucky enough to find that person, we interviewed Mason and Chris. They're 50-50 partners in a very successful business. But they started that business to make each other successful, not to solve a problem in the world. That was their problem to be solved. And success for them doesn't look like anything else other than making each other successful. So, yeah, he helped me find product market fit. That was much more valuable than being a commiserating partner, which was still helpful. But okay, let's ask you this. What's one practical first step I can take to build momentum towards my professional goal? Aaron, can I tell Carlos what your professional goal is? He's going to be furiously typing, or he's had that question on there so long that... Oh.
He said yes.
Okay. So Aaron's been with the company. He's been with his partner at this business, and then in a previous business, and then in a prior business because they were bought out since like 2006. And Aaron's a phenomenal developer, and he has been had customers reach out and say, hey, you have all this knowledge about building these ERP systems for supply chain companies. Aaron, I'm probably butchering some of this, but he has 2 other buddies that he wants to go start this with and timing is aligning for all of them. And so he has one customer. I think the company he's working for now is also going to be a customer of his, but it's going to change from him being an employee to them being his customer for his custom software development company. So, what would your advice be for Aaron as he sets out, leaves this company, gives up the steady salary and income? I don't know if you're leaving chips on the table if you have equity in your current company, Aaron, but um, I know you got to make this next thing work. So, what would you tell
I'll actually let you answer that first. I need more time to think. I don't know if I have an answer.
him? Let's see, Aaron. I think I always wish that I would have been convinced of this before, but the process works. The process works in both ways. Like, if you're not successful, there are principles that you either didn't learn or that you learned, but you ignored them and didn't apply them. And if you are successful, it won't be because of luck. It will be because there are principles that you learned and you adhered to them, or you didn't know that they were principles, but you still adhered to them.
Mhm.
Like, that's what success, at least that I've found in business, comes down to. And so it would be finding those principles and then having a massive amount of confidence in the efficacy of those principles. Like, if you find product market fit, you can sell your product for 3 times what it cost you to acquire the customer, and you can have healthy margins. Like, you can be successful, and you just do it over and over and over again. And so I would trust in that and say, like, okay, what are the principles that are going to govern this, that's going to make it successful, and then adhere to those principles long enough and know this is going to work. And I think that's where I faltered the most. Is I just wish I would have grown faster and with less drama if I would have leaned into the confidence around those principles that, yeah, this is going to work. There's no silver bullet, bro.
No, yeah.
But that's what I wish I would have believed earlier, that everyone starts off in their garage and
Yeah.
build something great.
As you're saying that, I've often I think I've shared this in the podcast maybe once, but definitely people that work with me have heard me just harper on this quite a bit. But the the best way to build confidence, um, to build trust between two people, so between you and somebody else, is to make a commitment and keep that commitment with that person. Then that's the easiest way to build trust between two people, and that's applicable to ourselves. Um, we make a commitment with ourselves and we keep that commitment. And as we make more commitments with ourselves and we keep those commitments, our confidence in ourselves will increase, will grow. And but something that we as human beings we often do, I feel like, is we set the bar too high. So instead of just, I haven't worked out in years, and then my goal is to lose, 50 kilos, 100 pounds, and go to the gym every day. And I don't know, Court, if you would agree with that actually, but I actually think that sometimes the answer is to lower the bar. Make commitments and set goals that are actually easier to achieve, and as you hit that, you have more confidence to go and do the next thing, and then you slowly increase your targets. The problem is that our target is, I'm going to go to the gym every day, or I'm going to go leave my job and start this thing from scratch, or I'm going to, we have to have this amazing looking platform to start. And honestly, sometimes I think the answer is to lower the bar. Just, I'm gonna wake up at 8 tomorrow. I am gonna go to the gym once a week. And as you start hitting those, I am going to have a Figma file with my product. Um, and you hit that, you gain confidence in yourself, you gain confidence in the process, and then you can set the target a bit higher, and then that creates so much momentum. But I think sometimes we just set the bar way too high. And it a lot of people would disagree, but I think it's to lower the bar.
I think that's genius. And as we were talking about the podcast, right? I mentioned Jane, that she gets so many views and so many likes in such a short amount of time. So she married my cousin Chris, and we were all good buddies up in college. And now she and Courtney are best friends. And no one knew, all the 14 to 35-year-old women who follow Jane, none of them saw her up at school doing her little photography business and posting photos of leaves and flowers and all this other stuff for years and years and years and years. Like, none of that was seen. All they see is, oh, she has a beautiful house. She's working with the biggest brands in the world, Cafe Rio and Living Spaces and Cozy Earth, and she's getting free jazz tickets. And it's like, oh my gosh, so amazing. She just came out of nowhere. It's like, how long was she going? And we were able to see her. And it was kind of like, yeah, everyone wants to be Insta famous, like, of course, but she stuck with it. There's so many other people that could have had what she had, but they didn't do it long enough. And it's because they never saw traction. Neither did she. Her photography business never took off. Her influencer business truly never took off. It wasn't until she switched it and put some humor in and did it in a different way and brought in some things that strategy is, right? Seemingly disparate things from here and here, and connected them this weird way. And then people started dying laughing and then subscribing and sharing her content. And so I totally agree with that. Have your success be tied to adherence to behaviors, not to outcomes. We've said this so many times, but it's hard for us, right? It's painful to look at 178 subscribers and be like,
Yeah.
this is what we have for a year's worth of work. But as you look at the trend, I was looking at, I'm scaling Covalent. It's a performance alignment software. And I was looking at the trend of how long it takes to get to 10 million in ARR. And it takes on average, 258 days, I think it was, to get to $10,000 of ARR. So $800 a month of recurring revenue, people don't hit until like almost Q4 of their first year. $800 a month in revenue. Like, I should have been proud of the $3,000 that we closed at the end of that first year. That was great. It's on the trajectory. And so if you can think in those terms, right, it takes almost a year to get to 10,000. But the difference between getting from numbers were from 21 million to 22 million takes on average 22 days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You go an entire $1 million increase in your ARR in 21 days because of the compounding effect. So I totally agree with what you said.
Yeah. I'm looking for this. Dang it! I'm looking for this a quote.
Gabby wants us to answer what the advice is that we give to a former version of ourselves. But I'll let you, if you want to find that quote first. Gabby, I'll answer that question. And are there any other questions that were sent in beforehand? If there are,
Yes,
I think we
there's
should
more.
hit them.
Um,
Gabby, we're gonna bookmark that quote. We will end with it because that is what we always end every episode with. What advice would we give to our former self?
as an entrepreneur, do you think intuition can sometimes see things that data misses?
What do you think?
Funny enough, I was thinking about that yesterday, playing chess, maybe 2 days ago. You know,
Have you been
that
playing chess?
I've been playing chess.
We need to play.
I'm not very good, but I've been playing chess.
That's how you could get some equity in Covalent.
I win
or lose some equity in Aspen.
No, not falling for that. I haven't really put these thoughts together because I had just started thinking about it. But everyone can learn how to play chess, and usually people have some early success. Like, you can win your class championship in chess just with intuition. Like, you being a little bit smart, you can actually win some chess matches. But when you start playing with the big guys, like in the bigger leagues, your intuition, you need strategy. You need to learn data, strategy, and moves. So I think intuition can take you so far in chess, but to step from, you can win your class championship, you can win your family, you can be the best one in your family by just being a little bit smart and in purely intuition. You can see the next moves, but you can only go to the next league, to the big leagues and play with actually people that, go to the school championship or the city championship only if you know strategy, if you've learned moves, if and then so answering that question is yes, I think early on you can rely on intuition, but that only takes you so far. But if you combine that with analytics, data, and strategy, that's where you go and play in the big leagues. But intuition alone only takes you so far.
I totally agree. When we were starting the podcast, I was looking into a bunch of social media gurus, and one of the ones I love is Ali Abdul. He has millions of followers and started off helping people figure out how to get into medical school in the UK, and then he's totally rebranded into the self-help, like, productivity YouTuber. And he said, get started, then get good, then get smart. And I think I've said that to myself so many times, even with COVID, like, just get started. You're going to suck no matter what it is. Get started. You don't have to, and that's what we did with the podcast, right? Like,
Yeah.
we didn't go buy a bunch of equipment. We recorded it on our phones. We didn't have mics. We just said, hey, let's just go record this and see if we enjoy it, see if we like it. We have a free space. We have chairs that are already available. Let's go see. So maybe we spent $30 and ordered a tripod and
Right.
started. So we got started, and then we're like, oh yeah, we did 10 of these. Let's get a little better. Let's start tweaking it, and then let's get smart. Like, who do we need to bring on? What concepts do we need to discuss? How are we gonna do our SEO and our keywords and all of those things? Like, have to follow afterwards. I also think that Hollywood has done an amazing job. If you've seen the second Top Gun,
Yeah. Maverick.
yeah, Tom Cruise, or maybe it's the first Top Gun. I think he's battling against this unmanned aircraft, and he's saying, like, I can. It's never gonna outdo a human being, and you're like, oh, he just has this God given talent and intuition, and that's why he's such a good fighter pilot. Blah blah blah. And people love that to be the story of, like, just the Harry Potter, like, you're a wizard, you're a gift, you have this gift. And that's not how life is. I don't see anybody and find out, like, oh, they just had this thing that was so much better than somebody else. Like, there's no golden path. There's no silver way to get to greatness. Like Kyrie Irving, I've been watching, like, as you see him this year, he's just, like, so stoic and so intentional, and he's playing out of his mind. But it's because he put hours and hours and hours and hours of beating on his craft and is applying the strategy, watching the videos. He's not just like people think Messi is just this God's gift to mankind. Never practiced. I'm sure he practices more than anyone else. He has some talents for sure. But he combined that with the strategy.
Yeah.
What else? Or did you have more comments on that?
No, I think that's no, that answers it
I want to know
perfectly.
more questions.
More questions. How would you define success now compared to when you started your career?
Whew. Is this for you or for me?
That's for, I think both of us can answer that.
Yeah, why don't you start?
And that's another question from Malena. So thanks, Malena.
Melena asks hard questions.
These are hard questions. These are intelligent questions. How would you define success now compared to when you started your careers? Oh boy.
Carlos would define it now as if he could look success and failure in the eyes with no change.
When I don't know, this can go so many directions. I When I was in college, I was at LDS Business College. I wanted to get my associates there, transfer to BYU, get my bachelor's at BYU, then get an MBA, and then we'll go work for a consulting company. No, not yet.
Still not? Why is it saying it?
Oh, I think we're back. No, I see it on my phone. I think we're back now, huh?
Back. Amazing.
Nice. What was the last thing you guys heard?
Do
We've been
have
going
have
on
no,
for.
the text came at 8:05, which is when it went out. But do we start talking about the Brazil initiative?
I don't know.
Did they hear that? Let's see.
If anyone can just share with us the last thing you heard. Yeah, Brazil initiative.
Sweet. Anyways,
Maybe we save that for.
Yeah, let's save it.
We're
Okay.
gonna save that. We're working on that initiative.
Yeah.
We're polishing that vision.
Making kings in Brazil. So to answer that same question, how did I define success when I started, and how do I define it now? Taylor Harris was on the podcast. We've had so many good learnings. So much of my thoughts, or so many of my thoughts, are shaped by who we've had on the podcast. And when I started off, it was all about me. Like, am I good enough? Am I great enough? Can I actually accomplish this? I remember that exact conversation with myself. I said, I want to be somebody that can accomplish this thing that I want to become. And it's this idea of being enough. So for me, success looked like being enough. And I measured that with financial outcomes. And had an interesting conversation with Taylor where he said, as long as you're asking the question, am I enough? The answer is always no. But when that pivot switches from am I enough to how do I accomplish my purpose? How do I make this change in this person's life? How do I drive this product forward? Make this change in this other person's company? Then you can start becoming enough. And I think for me, it started off, success was defined by this financial benchmark. And now success is defined by showing up each day with my actions being in gratitude, and my actions being in presence, and my actions being gritty, and my actions being smart and calm and collected, and having grace under pressure, and all of those things that I used to think greatness was, is just now a moment by moment opportunity to exemplify those things that I would have used to define greatness before.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
I think we've all heard people saying that money doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
And then that's usually said by people who already have money. So I'm listening to both of our answers, and we both started out as success was making a lot of money, and that vision has been refined to actually our purposes. Do you think that's I'm going to ask you that question. Do you think that's because you hit that financial benchmark first, and that offloaded that weight, and now you can actually find?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds like your question is, if you have this idea of success and then it evolves, is it necessary to hit your financial and monetary
Yes.
targets so that you have this free space to then say, okay, I'm going to climb success mountain, and then I come down it and then say, I'm going to climb value mountain, this intrinsic mountain. That's what you're
Yes.
asking. And you're saying, can you just climb intrinsic mountain
First.
without climbing value mountain?
Yes, that's a great clarification.
From a tactical perspective, I believe, well, it's nuanced. I was going to say, from a tactical perspective, you can't just, if your value is playing the guitar on the side of the street, I guess there are people that make money doing that. But if you also want to provide for a family and do these things, like, there has to be this intersection. We've talked about ikigai and finding your purpose, and there's, what are you great at? What can you be best in the world at? What can you make money doing? What are you passionate about? And where do those circles intersect? And that's where you find your purpose that you can do perpetually. I think if I would have had enough faith and less ego, then I could have climbed value mountain first. What I found super interesting with Covalent is I got to a point with Aspen so that I could be free to go do what I truly wanted to do. And now I'm doing what I truly want to do. But because it is in the center of the intersection of all of those circles, I'm making money doing what I love every day. And if any of my other investments went away, I would be able to have my exact same lifestyle doing what I'm doing every day right now. And so it's a tough question of how long do you stay on this train so that you can jump off and then go do what you want to do? I don't know the right answer for it. I know without the monetary side, I could go do covalent, but without the learnings that I had from Aspen, I wouldn't have the ability to go and do what I love. Um, that's a very interesting question. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Christ that says the foxes have holes, but the Son of Man hath no place to lay his head. If you increase faith to level 9,000 and decrease ego, or at least allow the voice to exist and have your actions be faith driven instead of ego driven, then yeah, I think there are people that go and live that with immense sacrifices, with families that don't necessarily have them around or that live in certain ways that are atypical for how humanity lives.
I love that. Should we answer that question from Gabi?
And wrap, are there any more? We can answer that question from Gabby and wrap. This has been amazing.
All right. What advice would you give to 25-year-old Court?
I think two things. One, the advice I gave went for Aaron, which was that the process works. If I could just sit across, I'd just say, Court, stop worrying about it. Like, it's gonna work. Just go and grind. Just put in the effort. Wake up the next day and the next day and the next day. And have some faith. Like, this is gonna work out. The only way it fails is if you stop. That's the only difference between success and failure, is everyone else that failed just didn't get up the next day at 6 and go back at it again. So that would be it. And the second thing I would do is probably just give myself a big hug and say, you're enough. You're already enough. You don't have to go prove it. You're already enough. I do wonder what that would have done to some of my ambition that was tied to Aspen. But as I've felt like I'm enough and pivoted to covalent, I've probably had more drive than when I started Aspen, which I thought I needed, like this fear-based fire under my butt. Thought to go and be successful, this chip on my shoulder, to be a hero, you had to have a villain, like all of those things that you hear. That is one form of motivation, but it's not the only form of motivation. It exists in a lot of successful people, but is not the thing that necessarily drives success. How about you? We can't say 25-year-old Carlos because that was like a couple months ago. So you're sitting across from recently married in the U.S.
20-year-old Carlos.
20-year-old working 3 jobs. Yeah, 6 years ago, Carlos.
This can go so many directions again, but keeping it to business or just life in general, I think there's this phrase, this expression or quote, very famous quote in Portuguese. It says, "There's nothing like one day after the other." I don't know if there is one here that says anything like that, but there's nothing like one day after the other. And I think what that means is if you're having a bad day, there's just like time will heal you. Like that will go away. If you're having a great day, that will also go away. But just especially during hard times, over the last 5-6 years of my life, I've had days, just that felt like there were 100 hours in one day, that they were so difficult, full of anxiety, there were depressing moments, there were losses, there were challenges, there were humiliating things that happened. there have been so much fear, but there's just nothing like there's a day after the other, you know. Tomorrow you will be feeling better. And maybe that's not tomorrow literally, but there's just nothing like time, you know. Time will heal all things. Or and it's not that easy, you know, it's just not time. You have to work on improving your situation or healing yourself, but just being patient and giving things time. There's nothing like a day after the other. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but just patience. I think that's it. It comes down to whether in a great situation or a really bad situation, just be patient and that thing will improve. Or yeah, patience. I've always been, you know, my mom taught me how to read when I was 3 to 4. So when I went to first grade, the teacher came to, you know, to my mom and said, he knows how to read, he knows how to write. It doesn't make sense for us to keep him here. Let's jump him. So I jumped to second grade. So all my life I've been that person, you know, just wanting to be ahead of everyone, wanting to like not being present, just what's next. And it's not just being better than everyone. It's not that. It's more like I was never content. I was never patient. I was always, when I was 14, I had a plan exactly what I was going to do every year of the next 10 years of my life. And I just would love to spend a day with that boy and just say, just be more patient, both with yourself and with your situation. Um, yeah, just,
You got a question. Time doesn't heal all wounds. Sometimes you're left permanently maimed.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and yeah, and maybe I misspoke. I wasn't really talking about the heals all wounds, but if you're having a depressing day, if you're having a really hard time, if you're having a challenge that's in front of you that's causing a lot of anxiety, um, to tomorrow it will be better. You will feel better. It's more that wound will still be there over time probably, but you will feel better um, if you just believe and just have patience through hard times.
I think
Thanks,
before
Aaron. Yeah, that's actually I believe that the time doesn't heal all wounds, but yes, but if you're patient in your situation, the right amount of patience and grind to get out of it. Um, I just think I've stressed and had anxiety over too many things all at once when I could have just been more patient with myself and my situations.
the future is going to be more expansive than
Yeah.
today was. I think one thing before we wrap, just so much gratitude. We realize that the podcast is a privilege that we have wives that are at home with young kids that are allowing us to be on the podcast. We have employees that are grinding and working to bring in revenue and fulfill that revenue. Um, Developing the software, managing the finances, all of those things. And we have you guys that listen that we're grateful for. It was amazing. I saw Aaron at a wedding, and I hadn't seen Aaron for a couple of years, and he pulled me aside. He said, "Court, Rob Monson introduced me to your podcast because he was on it, and I've been listening every week, and I freaking love it." And
Thanks, Aaron.
I was like, "No way!" Like somebody I know, and then a month or two later, somebody else, and then like more and more people just said, "Hey," and like people I've never met now, and it's only a few people, but you have no idea how meaningful that is, and humbling that you take the time to listen to the things that we have to share. I think part of why I love the podcast so much is it's most of the time not us talking, but us asking good questions for our guests to speak. We feel like they have so much to offer, and so we're really grateful for you guys. Carlos, grateful for you, bro,
Grateful for you.
making this happen.
Yeah, I feel like the podcasts have become one of the joys in my life. It's not easy. You know, there are days that we schedule an episode, and I have so much work to do, and we have families, but I just know it's gonna be worth it. I always know it's gonna be worth it, and it's been good. And I can't believe we've had, there are times we've had 9, 10, 6 people. To me, for a lot of people that would be discouraging, but I can't believe there's 6 people right now, just taking time from their evening to listen to us. So appreciate everyone.
Especially the ones in Brazil. That's a late night.
That's a late night. So I do appreciate you guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing. And we ask you to share even more. It's just the beginning. We're going to organize the content. We're going to turn it into, in a few years, we're going to turn it into a way to help the community even more, whether that's through funding or other ventures. But we are going to, it's just the beginning. So you liking it, you sharing it means the world to us. So thank you.
And we rebranded to Elevate Utah so that we can niche down in Utah. We felt like you have to have a beachhead, and the tip of the spear is going to be Utah. That's where we're going to drive this value and push it out. But there's a day where it will just be called the Elevate Podcast, and we'll expand it, and it will be international, even more so than it is right now. So thanks for being a part of it at the early stages.
Thanks, guys.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Thank you.